Klaper, it's amazing to have you here today on this Vegan Plant-Based Summit. How are you?
Oh, lovely to be here with you. I'm honored, and it's so important to educate our viewers. Really, it's one thing to be in the hospital and doing medicine, but to really do the healing on a societal level, we need people like you to do the educational part of it. And so I'm delighted and honored to be with you and your viewers today.
Thank you. So where did your plant-based journey begin? Because you were in medicine, obviously. So tell us where it all began and what made you transition?
Oh my. Well, it was kind of a convergence of two very powerful forces in my life. It was 1981. What is that? 40 years ago. I was working in Vancouver General Hospital in British Columbia as an anesthesia resident. I was going to be an anesthesiologist, and I was on the cardiovascular service. And so day after day, that's the service that deals with people's hearts and blood vessels. So day after day, I'm putting people to sleep, and I'm watching surgeons open up their chest and open up the arteries in their heart and pull this yellow, greasy gunk out of their arteries called atherosclerosis, which is leading to heart attacks and strokes. And I had a very personal interest because my dad died of clogged arteries. I know I have those genes. And I was very concerned back in 1981 that I would be laying on that table with that striker saw going up my sternum unless I changed something. And one day I watched the surgeon pull a particularly rubbery piece of gunk out of the patient's arteries, and I thought to myself, that stuff looks like chicken fat. And a little voice on my shoulder said, there's a good reason why it looks like chicken fat, doctor. It is chicken fat and cow fat and pig fat and the fat of the man, of the animals this man was eating. And there were already reports in the medical literature about the nature of the saturated fat and cholesterol making up these plaques, as well as the fact you can melt it away on a plant-based diet. And I knew that. And so I was getting a message from my left brain saying, change your diet to a plant-based one before you're on this operating table. And along with that, I had been reading the authorities on living a life of nonviolence. I had trained in Big Bad Old Cook County Hospital in Chicago, and I saw the worst of what humans do to each other down in the trauma unit, in the emergency room. And I wanted to at least get the violence out of my own life. So I was reading the stories of Mahatma Gandhi and Satchidananda and the Indian saints about leading a life of nonviolence, of ahimsa. And one night in Vancouver, I'm out with another anesthesia resident, and we're having dinner, and I'm talking to him about living a life of nonviolence while I'm finishing off a porterhouse steak at the local Cake and Cleaver Steakhouse. And he looked at me with great compassion and said, that's all very nice, Michael, but if you want to get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate, because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, you are paying for the death of the animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse. Well, as soon as he said that, all the old rationalizations jumped into my head. Well, the animal's dead already. That's what they raised them for, all of that. But before I could get the words out of my lips, that little voice said, he's right. He's right. And I had done much of my growing up, my uncle's dairy farm in Wisconsin. I know the violence associated with putting all meat on the table. I chopped the heads off chickens. I saw the butcher come and shoot the old dairy cows in the head. There's no question that meat is violence, and here I was paying for it. And when I went up to pay for the meal, I felt complicit in a crime, and I knew at that point my meat-eating days were over. And between what I knew in the operating room about my arteries and what I felt in my heart that night, I just couldn't be part of that system anymore. So I adopted a plant-based diet. My body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 10-kilogram spare tire of fat melted itself off my waist. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. Well, there was no going back. That point. In fact, there's no going forward to be an anesthesiologist and spend my career putting people to sleep. I knew I wanted to go back to general practice and help them wake up. So I did. I left my anesthesia residency. I went back to general practice, became a plant-based advocate, and helped my patients get the same benefits in their bodies that I had in mind. And in the last 40 years, I've become the happiest doctor I know because my patients get healthy right before my eyes. It's been such a privilege and such a wonder that there's nothing for me to do now but communicate with my fellow physicians about this very, very powerful tool, which we can talk about. But I'm pretty much doing that full time in educational work like this.
So that's interesting that you say that you're wanting to educate your fellow physicians, because when I speak to people as a health coach, they tell me, but the doctor says. And I said, but your doctor's got 6 days of training in his entire life on nutrition. How is he an expert?
Oh my. I've run out of disappointed adjectives to describe this. It's appalling. It's embarrassing for professionals who can identify a genetic mismatch on gene 821 on chromosome 14. Boy, we can home right in on that minutia. But the thought that our patient's diet filled with cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas might be clogging up their arteries, this somehow seems too complicated a concept for my colleagues to grasp. But seriously, it's just appalling. Doctors, we go through 4 years of medical school. Nutrition is totally ignored. We don't have respect for nutrition. It's a sissy science. Send them to the dietitian, she'll fix them up. I'm up in the emergency room doing real medicine. I'm up in the OR doing real medicine. But what are you doing in the operating room, doctor? You're dealing with the infections and the infarctions and the amputations from what your patients are eating. You're all dealing with nutrition-based diseases. And finally, the doctors are eating the same stuff themselves. They're eating their steaks and their lobsters. They're not going to tell their patients don't eat that. And then you get that disappointing, appalling spectacle of the doctor entering the surgery with a big obese belly and a pocket full of statins and beta blockers. He's the old man himself. What kind of example is that for the doctor to set to help his patients get healthier? So nutrition, boy, talk about being an orphan subject. Ooh, they don't want to hear about that. But I've been going around to the medical schools and talking to the first, second, and third year medical students before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brains and they think that drugs are the only treatment for patients, and saying, doctor, we've been saying, don't ask about the patient's diet. Ooh, that's cultural. Ooh, they may get offended. Yes, doctor, I tell the young students, ask about their diet. That's why they're sitting in front of you, overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed from what they're running through their bloodstream every 4 hours. And I put a very controversial question up on the slide there. Do you want to heal these patients or don't you? I mean, really, why'd you go into medicine? Want to heal these patients, or you want to see them every month just to raise their beta blocker dosage and their statin dosage? If that's the way you're going to practice medicine, you leave medicine. You want to heal these patients, then get real about what they're eating, and probably look at your own diet as well. But at least not only be aware of the power of nutrition, but the remarkable ability of a whole food plant-based diet running through their tissues, flooding their cells with phytonutrients and antioxidants and molecules that promote tissue repair. You see the most stunning reversal of these diseases within days. The obesity begins to melt away, and the tight arteries begin to relax, and the high blood pressure goes down, and the arthritic joints stop hurting, and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much. The migraine headaches get better. The diarrhea from the colitis gets better. They turn into normal, healthy people right before your eyes. And I tell the students, is that not the greatest gift as a physician that you could give to your patients? Well, if you really want to help them get healthy, not only know that nutrition is playing a role here, but the remarkable healing properties of a whole food plant-based diet. To ignore that to, if there was a pill that could create all these wonderful changes, we'd be prescribing it all day. Well, it's that powerful a tool, and it's really your obligation to learn something about it. So I've been teaching the students about plant-based nutrition, and they're very, very receptive to the message, thank heaven, unlike most of their professors.
With your customers, clients, patients, do you find that there's a disconnect between what they're actually eating and what they think they're eating?
Oh, absolutely. And, I just want everybody to know that I'm no saint. I'm not clucking my tongue or pointing my finger at anybody. I didn't have that episode in the restaurant till I was 35 years old. I ate meat for 34 of those years. I know what it's like to sleep that sleep and not really know what that steak really is, what that chicken breast really is, the animal that it belonged to. And so we're all asleep, the folks who are still at that state. And your mother didn't know, my mother didn't know. We were fed this when we were children, and we were, not only that, we're told by the government, you need this, you need protein, you need that meat every day. Dairy products, nature's perfect food, and okay, they must know. And so you think you're eating good food, and little do we know when the diseases start that the role that our diet played in that, when the arteries clog and the blood pressure goes up and the diabetes presents itself. It's we don't know what the regular foods do. And nowadays, thank heavens, there's been this wonderful awakening on the plant-based side there. There are the vegan movements gaining lots of credibility nutritionally, and there's been all these wonderful products available now to help people go plant-based. But to your question, so many of them are processed severely, and they're full of salt and sugar and oil, even though it says plant-based. So when you say we don't really know what we're eating, that's true even on the plant-based side. So the phrase that you and I use, it's almost become one word here: whole food, plant-based. But whole food, food like it grew in the garden that you could recognize. Oh, there's a tomato, there's a cucumber, there's an ear of corn. That's what we should be eating. And as long as you stay in that realm of basically whole foods, minimally processed, then your body will know what to do with it. Let me just finish up with this. I feel strongly, and the biology supports it, that we are basically plant-eating hominids. We have basically the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have. They're up in the trees eating leaves and fruit, growing these magnificent bodies. We've got fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got long intestines for digesting fiber. We've got small mouths with rotary jaw joints and flat molar teeth for chewing up roots and tubers and fruits. And we've got enzymes in our saliva for digesting starches. If that is not a message from the universe about what we should be eating, I don't know what is. We're plant-eating creatures, and to eat animal flesh, especially 2 and 3 times a day, and we can all handle small amounts of it a little bit, rarely, I suppose. But to be eating it on a regular basis is like putting diesel fuel, kerosene, in a petrol burning, gasoline burning engine. It's going to clog up and the spark plugs will foul, etc. It's the wrong fuel for us. And so we get these diseases of unknown origin. We don't know why your arteries clog. We don't know why you develop high blood pressure. It's the food. I have a plaque I used to have in my office here. It's the food. It's been the food all along, and that's the reality of it. And when you put that whole food, plant-based food stream through the body, hums right along, like a car on proper fuel there. So all the way around, we're plant-eating creatures. If we just honor our anatomy, a meat-based diet is a transgression of natural law. Now, we are plant eaters. As long as we stay on that side, stay in the right kingdom as far as our food choices go, then we should live long, healthy lives and stay out of the clutches of people like me.
So you mentioned magnificent bodies and protein. Now, what would you say to the bodybuilders of the world that say that they can't build muscle on plants. It just doesn't happen.
That there's what, you can't grow big and strong on plants, and it's not enough protein. Ask any gorilla, ask any buffalo, ask any giraffe, ask any rhinoceros. Look at these magnificent mammals that grow thousands of pounds of mammalian muscle without ever eating cheeseburgers and fried chicken. All the proteins come from plants. Even the carnivorous animals, the protein in their prey came from plants. But there's more than enough protein, as any gorilla will tell you. All plants have protein, first of all. And let me just say, if you nourish yourself on 2,000 calories of whole plant food, especially whole grains and pulses, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, 2,000 calories of a diet based on those foods, you can't help but get 50, 60, 70 grams or more of high-grade protein. It's in the plant foods. Nature can't make an ear of kernel of corn or grain of rice or a chickpea without garbanzo bean, without using all the amino acids. It's in there. In 40 years of plant-based medicine, I've never written a diagnosis on a chart of a protein deficiency. It just doesn't happen. That is not the issue. The bodybuilder guys, so they need an extra bowl of bean chili and an extra scoop of lentil stew, but you can certainly get all the protein you need out of whole plant foods. It just isn't an issue. A lot of books are sold, a lot of supplements are sold on the basis, you can't get it all from plants. But the truth is, as any rhinoceros will tell you, any gorilla and buffalo, there's plenty of protein in whole plant foods. So relax and eat your pulses and you'll be fine.
So muscles are actually built in the gym. They're not built off the back of protein powders, whether they're pea powder or whey powder. What happens to our bodies when we actually eat too much protein?
Indeed, I went through medical school and never heard the words too much protein, but it is a real issue. And there's a couple of mechanisms that your viewers should know about. First of all, concentrated protein, especially with these protein powders, including the vegan protein powders, they are absorbed so quickly. I mean, when you eat some lentils and some rice, it takes hours for the digestive enzymes to get into the whole lentil and the whole rice and start breaking it down, and you slowly absorb it. And the amount of amino acids goes into the bloodstream very gently. It slides through the kidneys to deal with it. But you put 50, 60 grams of concentrated protein powder into a smoothie or juice and you knock it back. That gets absorbed immediately, and this wave of amino acids slams into the kidney filters, the glomeruli, and it forces them into a condition called hyperfiltration, and increased blood flow, increased ion transport, and it injures the filter membranes, injures the glomeruli. And an excessively high protein diet is one of the major reasons people go into kidney failure from all this excessive protein. Also, when one eats protein, even in its whole plant form, this happens a little bit, but the worst happens when you eat meat and dairy products and use these protein powders, and a big load of protein goes right up into the liver. Well, the liver's faced with all these amino acids, all these building blocks. The liver thinks, let's build something with it. And it does. It puts out a surge of a growth hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1. And this is one of the most powerful growth promoting hormones in the body. And it sends the message out to every cell, grow, divide. When the signals come for you to disappear, to die off, called apoptosis, ignore that signal. You just keep growing. Well, if you're a woman with early breast cancer, you're a guy with a big prostate gland, the last thing you want is to walk around with high levels of IGF-1. And that's exactly what our paleo friends and our keto friends and the folks flooding their tissues with meat and dairy products all day do. And they walk on much higher IGF-1 levels, and there's no question they have a higher incidence of cancer and associated type diseases. And one of the noticeable, measurable benefits of adopting a whole food plant-based diet is when you do, your IGF-1 levels come down to normal. And phew, that's good. We're Americans, we think more is better, bigger is better. Well, it's not when it comes to your prostate gland. It's not when it comes to your artery walls. So all the way around, high protein, no, eat the protein that nature gave us in whole plant foods. And you want a little more protein, then focus on the pulses and the whole grains. But please don't be eating the flesh of animals or these concentrated protein supplements. Your body was not meant to handle them, and it doesn't handle them very well.
Two of the main fatty diets are the paleo and the keto. And what would you say to people that, even if they're vegan and doing those two diets, what would you say to them to try and change their mind that weight loss isn't everything? This is your health we're talking about.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. There's no question people who adopt a paleo diet, first of all, that's founded on such a myth, this idea that every Neanderthal had a mastodon in the freezer and spent all day eating mammoth meat. I'm a caveman, I eat meat all day. No, you don't, sir. The reality is first of all, most of the hunts that the guys went out were unsuccessful. Most times they came back empty-handed. If they did drag a carcass back into camp, it rotted within a day or two. There's no refrigeration. And when they examined the fossilized fecal droppings, yes, they are such things. They're called coproliths. You can see the massive amount of fiber these people were eating, 100 grams of fiber or more a day. We in the West here eat maybe 20 grams of fiber a day. You see that the huge amount of plants these folks are eating. And when you actually do the analysis, it turns out that most of the calories brought into the paleo camp were gathered by the women who spent all day foraging, from digging up roots and starchy tubers and gathering edible grasses and nuts and berries and fruits. Once again, the women got us through the tough times, thank heavens for them. And so this idea of the caveman, don't eat anything the caveman, there's all meat. No, it's not. First, it's founded on a myth. But in the practice of it, the 21st century version of that, my friend John McDougall, the doctor, says that people love to hear good news about bad habits. So, eat like the caveman. Well, what it's translating into is an excuse to just larder up your intestinal tract with all the sausage and bacon and meats and poultry that you can get down there. Well, you keep loading your intestine up with meat 3 times a day. Do that for 10, 20 years. This is a recipe, first of all, for colon cancer. Second, you're going to spawn microbes in that gut that eat carnitine, choline, creatine. They're going to send out molecules like TMAO that drive cholesterol into your artery walls. They're going, all the cholesterol and saturated fat is setting these people up for heart attacks and strokes. It damages the blood vessels in the brain. This is a recipe for dementia. And this is a formula for a tsunami of deadly degenerative diseases sweeping through our society. But these are young people and cynical guys who want to sell a lot of books who eat paleo. But I ask them, do you know anybody who's eaten this way for 10, 20, 30 years? No, you don't. This is theoretical because you like that taste of steak in your mouth. But there's no science behind it. When we look at the high meat eaters, they, as I said, die these early deaths from cancers and strokes, and all the fat gives them type 2 diabetes. But I get a little angry because in some ways, especially we've got a lot of young doctors. Oh, yeah, when you're 28, you can eat with linoleum glue and get away with it. And then a lot of these young docs, oh, you ought to be eating paleo, you ought to be eating keto. And I say, you're going to be around in 15 years when this guy passes his first bloody stool from that colon cancer that your paleo diet spawned in his colon. Well, you're going to be off to your new luxury spa in Arizona. You're not even going to see the results of this advice. You're going to be around in 12 years when this guy has a stroke from that big old carotid artery plaque your diet's swollen is already. You won't even be around for this. This is drive-by nutritional advice. And, we practice medicine by the adage, do no harm. Well, you can hurt somebody badly with a bad diet. And I think this is extremely perilous nutritional advice with no science and a whole lot of pathology behind it. So I have great concerns about this. And we're going to start hearing it the hard way. There's already reports showing up. The paleo folks have higher TMAO in their blood. They got more carcinogen in their gut. And when the public health studies show up, paleo eaters have more colon cancer, paleo eaters have more strokes. My left eyebrow won't go up that much. Yeah, I knew that. Knew that was going to show up. And it's sad because it's so preventable and it's so short-sighted. So it will run its course, and I'm afraid a lot of people are going to pay for that. For taking the advice from people who don't really have their best interest at heart.
Give us an example of the best types of vegan plant-based protein that won't cause all of those nasty side effects.
Well, as I said, I was amazed. If you actually do a search on protein in whole plant foods, you'll be amazed. When we are little infants nursing at our mother's breast, that's when we consume the most protein. The protein concentration of breast milk is 5% of the calories are from protein. And that's when we're growing our fastest, when we need the most protein, where we're consuming a diet with a food stream with 5% protein. Well, all grains, wheat, corn, barley, oats, quinoa, have 7-8% protein, right? And so every whole grain, every cereal, every whole grain bread have plenty of protein. But then, as I mentioned, thank heavens for the pulses, nature's gift for protein fans. All the lentils and bean chickpeas, they're clipping along at 12, 17, 20% protein in every bean. So there's plenty of protein just in the grains and the legumes. But even the fruits are 4, 5, 6% protein. The green leafy vegetables, I think, are 9 or 10%. When I made that statement earlier, that if you're eating 2,000 calories of whole plant food, you can't do this on granola bars and energy drinks. You got to really eat the whole plant foods. But if you're really eating the whole, the porridge and berries in the morning, and lunches and dinners are colorful salads and hearty vegetable soups and big plates of green yellow vegetables, but again, those starches, those healthy grains and potatoes and the lentil stews and the bean burritos and the bean chilies and the Asian curries with all the lentils, etc. in there, you can't help but getting 60, 70 grams of high-grade protein. I just did a nutritional analysis for a patient, sent me a 3-day food diary, and he's clipping along almost 80 grams of protein on fairly low, you would think, low protein foods here. To everyone with protein anxiety, if you wake up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding and sweat coming down your fellow, where am I going? I'm protein deficient. I tell you all, relax. Eat your pulses, eat your cereal, eat your fruit, and go live your life with confidence. You're not going to die of protein deficiency, I guarantee you. If you do, you get your money back.
The reason I asked that question was because a lot of people tell me, what, beans? No, I can't eat them because they have a bad reaction with me. It's not the beans that are having the bad reaction, is it? It's their gut.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that because it's a real thing. I tried to be vegan once, gave me gas, can't do that. And so let's talk about this. First of all, the majority of, they analyzed the gas in the colon, must have been a wonderful experiment to do, but turns out that the majority of gas in the colon is not produced by the action of bacteria on sugars in the diet. Most of it is swallowed air. Wow. Yes, it comes from a couple of places. One, every time you swallow, 2 tablespoons of air goes down your stomach. And once it's in your stomach, it's going to go 1 of 2 places. It's going to go up, going to go down. And you swallow 20, 30 times in a meal, you'll have a good half pint or more of air in your stomach, and you either release it discreetly from above, or it's going to pass down through your intestinal tract and give you some gurgling, and eventually you'll pass it as flatulence. And certainly if you drink carbonated beverages with your meal, if you drink through a straw, you're going to swallow more air. And so the key to preventing that, and plus there's air in the food. If you have a forkful of rice, there's air between the grains of rice. If you've got a forkful of salad, there's air between the leaves of lettuce. You have a forkful of broccoli, there's air down the floret of broccoli. There's air in the food. And if you're eating and talking to your friends and you're shoveling the food and two chews, boom, down it goes, you've swallowed all that air, and then you have to deal with it. So in my digestion lectures, I tell people, listen, it's really important, as you Brits say, chew your food to a cream, to really chew your food well, to break down the cell walls so you're able to absorb the nutrients that are in the food. We're not what we eat, we're what we absorb. And the way to absorb it is by chewing that food to a puree, and that's for good nutrition. But it turns out that another benefit of chewing your food to a cream, you force most of the air out of the food. So one strategy is slow down. Put a forkful of salad in your mouth, put the bloody fork down, make salad puree in your mouth, take an extra 5 seconds to chew that food really well, and you'll swallow a whole lot less air. So that's certainly a watchword that people should take away from this. Now, about 20% of the gas produced in the colon is produced by bacteria digesting sugars on the surface of legumes, of the peas and lentils, etc. These sugars are called raffinose and stachyose. Well, the good news is that these sugars are soluble in water. And that means that if you're going to be making bean chili or lentil stew the next day, then before you go to bed, take the beans or the lentils, put them in a bowl, cover them with fresh water, let them sit overnight. And most of the surface sugars will dissolve into the water. The next morning, put a plate over it and spill off the soaking water, rinse it a couple times, and you'll get rid of the vast majority of these gas-producing sugars. So soak those beans and rinse them. And finally, cook them really well. People worry about lectins on beans. Well, these lectins, people have been eating beans for thousands of years. They're the most commonly protein-containing food consumed around the world. But they've got to be cooked well. As long as you cook the legume, the beans, either boil them, steam them, pressure cook them, as long as you cook them enough so they are so soft you can squish them easily between your fingers, the lectins are gone. They are heat susceptible substances. So you cook them so well that you can squish them, take care of the lectins, and that also further degenerates these gas-producing sugars. So by and large, if you cook your legumes really, really well, and then you soak them before you cook them really well, chew your food really well, the gas problem gets tolerable. All animals pass gas. It's part of being a mammal and eating starch and water. Every animal does, every human does it. No one ever died of gas. I've never written that on a death certificate. And I tell you, this too shall pass. Sorry about that, but it's true. And as your gut bacteria changes, you adopt this diet and chew it well. And so as the months go by, the microbiome, the organisms in your colon change into less gas-producing ones. So all the way around, relax, chew your food well, cook your legumes well after you soak them, and know that as time goes by, it'll become this much of an issue. But the good that it's doing you, the health that it's bringing you, the beneficial microbes that it's spawning in your gut, the legumes summon up a particularly beneficial kind of microbes, Prevotella and other bacteria that have anti-cancer properties. They put out neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine that get into our brain and make us happier. They improve our mood. The benefits you get from consuming foods with these with the leguminous features in them, etc., are so powerful. And again, we're just honoring our anatomy. We're plant-eating creatures here. So don't let that deter you. And with time, this all gets better. And so don't let one person's experience put you off. Learn on your own experience.
So you said you're not what you eat, you're what you absorb. So tell me more about that, and how, as a vegan on a plant-based diet, you need to supplement your diet to make sure that you get everything that you need.
Indeed. Everything, in quotes, are in those whole plant foods. Certainly all the protein we need, certainly all the carbohydrates we need, certainly all the minerals we need, the sodium, potassium, manganese, copper, etc. They're in the Earth's crust, and they get taken up by the roots of the plant. So again, you want to eat all those lovely fresh green salads, and with all the colorful root vegetables, turnips and beets, carrots, etc. Those are important. And all the vitamins that make our cell enzymes work, the B vitamins and the fat soluble vitamins, they're in the plant foods as well. And again, never had a gorilla coming off the doc. Where do I get my vitamin B12? And the reason that they don't have that problem, and because people will say, oh, you're vegan, then you got to take a B12 supplement. See, it's not a natural diet. You've got to take a supplement. But so let's talk about vitamin B12, because it is the one vitamin that we do have to supplement. And it's an absolutely essential vitamin, no question. You need it to keep your brain functioning, to keep your spinal cord working, to keep your blood production normal. You need some vitamin B12, not very much, a couple of micrograms, millionths of a gram every day, and stored in the liver. You don't need much, but you don't want to run short of it. So where does it come from? Now, our meat-eating friends will say, it's in red meat. That's why I need to be a carnivore here. But wait a minute. Where did that cow get the B12? Where did that chicken get it? Didn't make it. Cows don't make B12. Chickens don't make B12. No animal makes B12. So where does it come from? It comes from microbes that live in our soil. And when the deer and the antelope and the elk are grazing, they're pulling up clumps of grass that have soil particles clinging to the roots. And in these soil particles are these B12 producing microbes. And the animal, the cow, and the other native animals chew up, swallow it, and the microbe goes down to their gut, starts producing B12, which the animal absorbs and puts into its muscles. And yes, you can kill the animal and strip the flesh off its bones and eat it and get the B12 that way. But the animal did not make that. That was microbial B12 all along. Well, when we were ancient humans, foraging, digging up roots and tubers, we got our B12 the same place the deer and the antelope do. Every root and tuber we would pull up would have soil clinging on the surface, and there'd be the B12 producing microbes in those soil particles. We'd eat that, and we would swallow it just like our gorilla cousins do. When we were thirsty back in ancient times, we'd find the nearest stream and plop down and drink stream water. Well, there'd be B12 in the stream water from the animals that drank there. So when we were living earth-connected lives, like the native animals do, we were getting our B12 from the same sources the deer and the antelope and the gorillas get them. It's only because we're now living in modern times, and welcome to the 21st century. Nobody's drinking out of streams. Nobody's eating unwashed vegetables. We wash a vegetable with chlorinated water. And so due to modern sanitation, which I'm all in favor of, I don't want to be treating cases of cholera and typhoid fever in the water. But due to modern sanitation, the natural B12 sources in our diet have been removed from us. It's the trade-off, it's the bargain we make for fresh, clean water coming out of our bathroom taps there. And for that reason, the pure plant eater who's not eating the flesh of other animals does have to find a source of vitamin B12 to supplement with. Fortunately, it's easy to come by these days. The smart folks in the supplement industry take those B12 producing microbes, they grow them in big vats of culture medium, and they skim off the B12 and they put it into drops and little tablets that go into your tongue. They put it in multivitamins and they put it into soy. At least in my country, they put it into soy milk, into frozen dinners. There's plenty of B12 around. It's been a long time. I've seen a couple of cases in B12 deficiency in vegans, and it should never happen. And you don't want to let those fingers get tingly. By the time you show signs of B12 deficiency, you're already hurting your spinal cord and your brain. This is nothing to play with here. But once or twice a week, put a little drop of B12 under your tongue and get on with it. I have a T-shirt that says "Eat plants and get on with it," and it's kind of, you take your B12 and you get on with it there. But again, it can't be a reason. It can't be a rational. Oh, see, it's not a complete diet. It can't be natural. Nothing is natural in our lives, and let's stop kidding ourselves. Modern life is so far removed from a natural life. The water we drink is not natural. The vegetables we're eating were created basically from the breeding programs, and these animals that people are slaughtering. There were no dairy cows back in the Pleistocene age. We've created these animals, so let's stop playing the unnatural card. We are pseudo semi-natural creatures living in an unnatural world these days. You do the best you can, and you cause as little harm as you can to your own body, to the animals, to the planet. Go through this life causing as little damage as you can. And when I hear the carnivore guys and the paleo folks, everybody ought to be eating this way, it's the best diet. Sir, are you really proposing a diet based on animal flesh 3 times a day for 8 billion people on this planet? What are you talking about? This planet's already being destroyed from all the flesh that's being produced. We can talk about it, but we cleaved off the forests, and the soils are eroding off the fields, and the water is being taken up to grow animal flesh. Our flesh-based diet is driving all the environmental problems we're facing these days. Most greenhouse gases are coming from the animals and the fuels burned to create them. Another topic we could touch on, but these claims they're making are so short-sighted. For their own health, for their readers and disciples' health, and certainly for the health of the planet and the children that are going to inherit this planet. I think the lights are flashing. Individual humans, especially if you've got health problems, you want to be healthy, adopt a whole food plant-based diet. Homo sapiens as a species, you want to keep surviving on this planet, adopt a whole food plant-based diet. The lights are flashing, no matter how you look at it. The era of meat eating is over. We've used it up. We've used fishing up. We've clear-cut the oceans. It's time to let them heal. We've used meat eating up. We've used the soils up here. It's time to let the forests come back. How are we going to get rid of this carbon dioxide? Nature came up with the best. Yeah, I see these carbon capture machines. Nature came up with the best carbon capture machine ever. They're called trees. And if we cut them down to make grazing land for the cattle and crop land for the cattle and the pigs, well, if we just go to a plant-based diet, well, as a society, that we need so much less land to produce our own food. There'll be plenty of land for the trees to come back. And as the trees grow, they take carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it into solid wood, and the carbon dioxide will start going down. All we have to do is eat plants and let the trees grow. They're a little bit more than that, cover crops, all that stuff. But basically, how are we going to get out of this environmental disaster? Adopt a plant-based diet and let the forest come back. That's the recipe. And we'll live to eat another veggie burger, as a species. So a little commercial for Mother Earth there, but it's all tied in. It's such a validation of what we're talking about. It works on every level, the health level, the ethical level. Those millions of animals in those sheds tonight, they're waiting to get their throats cut. How dare we do that? And then on the environmental level, on every level, the eat plants light is flashing. Eat plants and get on with it. On my T-shirt there.
70% of all soya grown on the planet goes to feed cattle. Now, if we fed that soya to humans, that we would probably be able to get rid of poverty and hunger What's your take on to eat soya products or to not eat soya products?
Oh my. First of all, thank you. I really recommend your readers get this lovely little book called Food is Climate by Glenn Mercer. Little book you can read, and half of its recipes you can read. It's only about 70 pages for the message. You can read it in 2 hours, and it'll educate you on this very, very important subject. And as you say, if I can just set the stage a bit, down South America, we're burning the rainforest, turning it into to grazing land for cattle and cropland, growing soy. And I've had people saying, see, you vegans are the problem. It's all that tofu they're producing down in Argentina, all that soy, it's your fault. People, the vast millions of tons of soybeans grown in South America and certainly in my country, the whole Midwest, growing corn and soybeans. Those soybeans are not destined for tofu and tempeh, though that is shoveled down the gullets of cows and pigs and chickens to make cheap cheeseburgers. And so, again, if we stop using it for that, there'll be plenty of room for the forest to come back. Now, what about soya itself? Back in the early 1990s, I was working with author John Robbins, who wrote Diet for a New America, and we were going around the country. We were giving this message about the advantages of reducing meat and adding plant-based foods to your diet. And meat production started going down. It started showing on the graphs in America. Well, that must have set off alarms in Denver and the Cattlemen's Association, because within months, this tsunami of misinformation, as far as I see, this anti-soy propaganda flooded the newsletters, and we didn't have the internet then, but it started showing up everywhere, newspaper articles, interviews on TV. Oh, soy, don't you know it's got phytoestrogens? Feed your baby soy formulas, like giving them birth control pills, gives women breast cancer. Ooh, soy is bad. And one, it was an outrageous misrepresentation. It was, do I dare use the word, it was a lie. Not only doesn't it do those things, we're talking about phytoestrogens. These are molecules that the soybean makes that have a vague chemical structure as actual mammalian estrogens, but they're far, far weaker. And it turns out, we didn't know then, but it turns out that it actually is beneficial for women to prevent cancer. We didn't know that there are 2 types of estrogen receptors in the breast tissue, and one gets stimulated, promotes cancer growth, but the other, the B-type receptors, when you stimulate those, it has an anti-cancer effect. Well, that's what the phytoestrogens, soy, actually stimulate. And so it has an anti-cancer property. The women who eat generous amounts of soy, like in Japan, have a much lower incidence of breast cancer. If a woman has breast cancer and has soy in her diet, it grows much more slowly. So it's just an outrageous misrepresentation of the truth of it. But to this day, in your question, here we are 30 years later, it's still echoing around. Oh, don't you know soy is bad for you? It gives you man boobs. No, it doesn't. What does are dairy products, if I may wax a little bit here on reality. On my uncle's dairy farm back in the 1950s, well, a cow is fertile, we'd lock her up in the stanchion, call the breeder guy, he'd ram this tube of bull semen into her uterus. No cow like that. She would get pregnant to conceive. And if she had been giving milk, she'd stop giving milk, she'd dry up. And there's a reason pregnant mammals don't give milk. We'll go into that if you like. But she would dry up. And my uncle, I remember him taking out a little notebook and he'd write down, well, bossy number 17 won't give milk till she has her calf in the spring and the date that we fertilize her. And well, that's the way it was in biology. Nothing you can do about that. Pregnant women, pregnant cows don't lactate. Well, we had 49 cows on our farm. Fast forward modern days, these big installations in Iowa, Nebraska, probably where you are, they're milking 1,000, 2,000 cows twice a day. they cannot afford to have their best milkers go offline for 9 months while they're carrying their calf. And so they've genetically modified the cows. Most commercial dairy cows now have been genetically modified. So they will give milk all the way through their next pregnancy. They're carrying their baby calf and they're still giving milk. They're still pulling milk off. Well, when a female mammal, including humans, and all your female listeners who have children know this, when a female mammal is pregnant, her body is full of estrogens. It gets into all the tissue, makes her hair grow, makes her breast grow, makes her uterus grow. Estrogen is wonderful for that. But it gets into the milk, which is why nature has those pregnant mammals stop lactating. If a mother fox who has 8 little kits that she's been nursing, and half of them are males, if she gets pregnant, she doesn't want a bunch of estrogen-laden milk go into the male kits, so she stops lactating. When they get pregnant, they dry up. Well, as I said, today's dairy cows, they don't dry up. They just keep pouring milk out. So today's milk is full of estrogens. Well, why are our little girls going through puberty at age 8 and 9 and 10? You're going to have something to do with this river of milk and cheese and ice cream and yogurt we're telling them to eat for their bones. Meanwhile, it's full of, and these are not puny little phytoestrogens in soy. These are official mammalian estrogen. These are estrone, estradiol, estriol, pregnanediol, progesterone. These are official mammalian estrogens. When you follow these little girls into womanhood, they get a nasty instance of breast cancer because they've been stimulating their breast tissue with estrogens for 20 years. Not only does it give guys man boobs, and every 100th case of breast cancer is in a man, not very comforting, but estrogens make the prostate gland unstable. The more dairy a boy eats, the more cheese and milk a boy eats, the higher his risk of prostate cancer when he's a man on every level. Eating estrogen-related dairy products. People are, don't eat that soy. Are you kidding? Stop the dairy. Plus, they feed chickens estrogens. It's an estrogen-laden diet if you're eating animal products. Stop with the phytoestrogens and all of that. It's ridiculous. And no one's telling you 2 pounds of tofu every day. You crumble up a little tempeh into your spaghetti sauce, a couple of slices of tofu on a sandwich is not going to cause estrogenic problems. I guarantee it. And have an honest look at what the animal products really contain. You'll change your viewing, I assure you.
Thank you for clearing that up, because that's an argument I have with people all the time. Soy is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. But one of the things that as a nation, and I call the Western nation, that we suffer from at the moment is, and in a big way, is obesity. Now, aren't we carrying a lot of estrogen around in that fat?
Absolutely. And as you properly said, obesity is rampant. In the space of my medical career, 50 years, I have seen this tsunami of obesity sweep through our society. It's stunning. Every other American is overweight, and over half of them are clinically obese. But it's the third rail. Like, oh, can't talk about, oh, you're fat shaming. Oh, can't mention that. Can't talk about that. Well, and first of all, please, I'm not fat shaming. I have nothing but compassion for these people, because again, they didn't know. No one's telling them really what to eat. Their mother didn't know. Their friends didn't know. And certainly the food industry and the advertising industry is not their friends. And they're telling them, the food folks come up with these hyper palatable, salty, sugary, fatty treats of all types. And plus the dairy. And all the extra calories and the fried foods and the fried chickens and the meat. It's so easy to become obese in this country. And people largely look at it as a cosmetic problem, a social problem. But one, as you know, obese people, they have a host of medical problems. Just the obesity grinds down their hip joints. They get more hip replacements. They have more cholesterol in their blood, so they get more heart attacks and strokes. They have a host of medical problems. But to your original question there, it turns out the obese abdomen is not just a cosmetic issue. When you actually, and I have a slide in my slide presentation of a plastic model of an obese abdomen cut lengthwise, When you look at it from the side, from the inside, there's two types of fat. On the inside, surrounding all the intestines, the visceral fat, nasty metabolism goes on there. Why? Because it puts out these molecules called inflammatory cytokines that set off inflammation throughout the body, interfere with insulin receptors, make diabetes worse. That's the fat in the abdomen, the visceral fat. But to your question, the other kind of fat is under the skin, the subcutaneous fat, and it can be 3-4 inches thick of fat, slapped onto the abdomen. Well, it turns out that the subcutaneous fat is metabolically active. It's no passive bystander. And guess what its main metabolic product is of this fat? Estrogens, as you folks pronounce it. The subcutaneous fat pumps out estrogens. It's the most powerful estrogen producing tissue in the body. Well, you're an adult man or woman, and you've got 30 or 15, 20 kilos of adipose tissue pumping out estrogens. That's the recipe for what we implied earlier, for breast lumps, for breast cancers. The estrogens make the uterus, the muscle of the uterus, get big and spin out these benign tumors called fibroids, myomas, that then increase vaginal bleeding, make the woman anemic. Then the surgeon says, you need to lay on the operating table, take out your uterus, do a hysterectomy, stop your bleeding. And so women lose their uteruses that way. If they go vegan, their uterus goes back to normal size, by the way. And again, if she's got some breast cancer, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. And the obese women die faster, harder deaths from breast cancer, along with more strokes and more diabetes and all that entails. So, and the dairy products and the animal fats play the major role here. I'm not saying all these plant oils and sugars are good for you, but obesity absolutely has its own problems. It's got these estrogen-related problems, and it's mostly, you don't see many fat vegans. If you do, you see the occasional one, but by and large, one of the blessings, the beauty of eating whole plant foods, it's mostly fiber and water. That's what that soup is. That's what that salad is. That's what rice and beans are. And it's guilt-free eating. If you want to go back for a third bowl of vegetable soup, who cares? You don't have to count calories. You don't have to count carbs. And eat till you're full. How many apples can you eat? How many bowls of salad can you eat? Eat till you're pleasantly full. And the weight melts off of you by and large, unless you're eating lots of vegan donuts and junk foods. But if you're eating whole plant foods, the weight takes care of itself. It's one of the benefits. It's one of the okay signs from your body and from nature. By the way, we'll take care of your obesity problem for you to give you a nice, lean, healthy body. So all the way around, obesity is not something we have this American Society for Fat Acceptance. I do not accept it. Don't shame anybody. They got work to do and change what they're eating. But it's not a matter of shaming. Welcome them into a plant-based diet, and they will benefit on every level.
I think everybody on the planet, everything and everybody on the planet will benefit from a vegan plant-based diet. One of the things I want to touch on is DHA and the brain, and the lack of supplementation of the right omega-3s. Tell us a little bit more about that, just so people can actually understand how important it is.
Right. This is a question of significant controversy. About half my vegan doctor friends take supplemental DHA. What is DHA? This is a long-chain fatty acid, a bunch of carbon atoms strung together like little poppet beads. They used to make necklaces out of it. Well, this is 22 carbon atoms. And your brain makes this out of the oils in our food, and we use it to make our brain chemistry work, cell membranes and cell nerves, cell wrappings and structures, etc. Now, the question is, do we make enough of it, and do you need to take supplemental DHA? Now, there's a lot of DHA in fish oil, which we'll come back to in a minute. But because our vegan friends are not eating fish, where are they getting their DHA? And so about half my friends in the scientific world take DHA made from algae. And by the way, well, a word for the fish here, well, that's where you got to get your omega-3s from eating that fish. No, you don't. Guess what? Just the way that cows and pigs don't make vitamin B12, fish don't make DHA. Well, where does it come from? Like most everything else living on this planet, it comes from plants. What kind of plants? From algae cells that float in the water. Fish swim in the water all day with their mouths open, swallowing algae. And it's the algae DHA that winds up in the fish's muscle. Yeah, you can kill the fish and crush it and get fish oil out of its flesh, but it's algae DHA, really. And if you want some DHA, nowadays they're growing those same DHA producing algae in big vats, and they skim off the algae and they isolate the DHA. And so if you want to take DHA, then get it, make sure the label says algae derived. But do you need it? And it is 100% safe. I'm far from convinced. In fact, I've stopped taking it myself, and I'm doing more research. I'm going to be putting out a video and a position paper on this soon. Why am I concerned about it? Well, again, it's a little hard to believe that nature, because there's DHA in dark green leafy vegetables, it's in flax seeds, it's in, the precursors, there's an 18 carbon chain called ALA that's in flax seeds and hemp seeds and chia seeds, dark green leafy vegetables. And absolutely, you've got to eat, they're all omega-3 fats. You got to eat those omega-3s every day. So on my porridge this morning, we've got a big jar of ground up flax seeds and hemp seeds in the fridge. I put 2 big tablespoons on, or add it to my smoothie. Now, you got to eat the omega-3 ALAs, that's true. But now, will your body turn that into DHA for you? Some folks say, no, humans don't do that very well. And in some folks, there's low levels in their blood, and they say, see, you got low levels in your blood, so you need to take it. But what shows up in the blood probably doesn't matter. What matters, what's happening in your brain cells. Do your brain cells, when they get that ALA, are they capable of making the chain lengthening step? Turns out, yes. There are studies have just come out. Your brain very well makes the DHA that it needs. You don't see it out in the bloodstream, but our brains seem to be quite capable of making that chain lengthening step. And I'm sorry if I get a little too sciencey here, but it's one of the main things that stopped me from taking it, the algae-derived pure DHA. It turns out that when you eat the 18 carbon atom ALA, your body then adds 2 carbons that turn it into 20 carbon atom EPA. And the EPA is then lengthened by 2 more carbon atoms to 22 carbon atom DHA. Well, now it's been known for years when you take DHA, it turns out that your EPA level in your blood, at least, goes up. And it's good. The DHA is so benevolent, it shucks those last 2 and turns itself back into EPA, and that's why it backfills up the EPA levels. So it's good for it. Turns out, now that they have done these isotope studies and these really subtle tracing studies, it turns out that's not what's happening. The reason why when you take DHA, the EPA goes up is that the DHA, normally when the body turns the ALA into EPA, it's immediately taken up by the brain cells, turned into cell membranes, neurotransmitters. The EPA doesn't last in the brain cells very long. But when you're taking supplemental DHA downstream there, that gums up the works. And what you're seeing, that raise in EPA is not backfilling from the DHA. It's the works of the metabolism, the clearance of it's been gummed up. And so now it's piling up in your tissues. Is that a good thing? I don't know. And very importantly, what else? That's the only thing we see. But what? Maybe there's thousands of reactions to that EPA that aren't happening, and we're not even looking at or measuring. So you have to ask, with this clumsy act, take some DHA. What are you really doing, doctor? What are you really doing? We don't know what we're doing. And if I have a 20-year-old vegan asking me, should I be taking DHA? And I say, yes. What am I saying? Yes, for the next 20, 30, 40 years, retard your EPA metabolism. And it'll prevent dementia. Do I know what I'm talking about when I say that? No, I don't really know that. And so all the way around, we were given, people who have osteoporosis, why was I given a body with a heart that lasts 100 years, but bones that fall apart at 60? Then nature wouldn't do that. Well, the same thing. Why were we given this wonderful brain, but it can't make enough DHA for itself? Well, why is that not true? Why would that be true? So it doesn't fit me. And as long as I'm eating plenty of flax seeds, etc., it may not show in my blood test, but I'm going to have confidence right now, and they're going to be doing more of these tracer studies, that the DHA level in the brain is more than sufficient. So right now I've got a bottle of DHA in the fridge, and I look at it every morning. I wave to it, but it's still sitting there, and I just can't bring myself to put that squirt on my tongue. What am I doing? I'm backing out my EPA metabolism. Is that a good thing? I don't know. It doesn't feel good anymore. So I may be there might be new studies showing it absolutely does prevent some disease, and I'm open to changing. I'm a scientist. Better information comes along, I'm willing to change. But right now, I put a hold on that. But eat your flax seeds, eat your chia seeds, your hemp seeds, eat those dark leafy greens. Be more than abundant with your omega-3 intake, and trust your body and watch the science. Watch this space.
And eat them every day, not just once a week or once a month.
Valid point. Find ways, we ought to be eating dark green leafy vegetables at least, twice a day with lunch and dinner. Eat that kale and chard, Brussels sprout, broccoli, because they all have omega-3s in them. So, and plus they have, so much else. They help your nitric oxide and your arteries, for all sorts of other reasons, be eating those greens. But absolutely, the same thing with the omega-3 seeds, and now a handful of English walnuts also are a good source of ALA as well. So be generous with those omega-3 foods. Sorry if I got some of my terms mixed up there, but I think you got the point there.
Yeah, it's great that you've managed to explain that. Now, going back to omega-3s or omega acids or fatty acids, whatever we want to call them, Seaspiracy came out, and everybody that watched it seemed to be shocked by the film. And it shows you how overfishing the oceans is a big problem, not just to our health, but to the environment. Now, in all of this plant-based venture, the only thing that we care about is the health of humans, the health and welfare of animals as well, and the environment. Now, who are the actual patients in all of this situation?
Well, let me just say one sentence. It doesn't matter what your cholesterol level is, what your cancer risk is, if we do not have a viable planet to live on. You don't have enough water, food, and roof over your head. I don't care what your cholesterol number is, and you're not going to be coming to see me to help lower your cholesterol level. And you're going to I'm starving to death and my kid is dying from diarrhea from the dirty water, is what you're going to be saying. So the real patient really is planet Earth, who we all depend upon, how we've abused her for turning her into money. Well, you can't eat money. And the same problem with our future, we were trading it for third quarter profits for corporations. But who's the real patient? Not only is the planet upon which we depend for everything, our next breath, literally, the air we breathe, but the water we drink, the food we eat, the car we drive, it all comes from Earth here. And so she's the main patient, especially the viable part of the biosphere that keeps recreating our food and water. But the other patients are every child on this planet. Every time I see a mother pushing an infant in a pram, I feel like running over to the baby, getting on my knee and apologizing to that child for what we have done to their planet, to their future. What right have we to do that? What right have we to drive 1,000 non-human creatures extinct every day, apparently, on this planet. What arrogance, what hubris, what short-sightedness. We're like hacking off parts of our own body here because we want to lose weight or whatever. What a short-sighted strategy that is. And the same with the pursuit of, if I say this orgy of animal flesh gorging that we've embarked upon. No, not even the carnivorous animals. Tigers, lions don't eat meat 3 times a day. And certainly the vegan, but no gorilla eats meat 3 times a day. They certainly don't feed flesh to their young 3 times a day. It's such a transgression of natural law because we both like the taste of it. And we're told that you need to do this. Well, save thyself. First of all, nowadays you don't have to do it for the taste anymore. They've got these Impossible burgers and the clean, the good catch tuna that are really made from plants. I'm not saying they're the world's healthiest food, but at least they've got no cholesterol, no animal was killed. They're gentle on the environment. Have an Impossible burger once a week if you want to. Don't eat them every day. But it's they taste pretty meaty. So the taste thing is being obviated. We don't really need it. And as far as nutrition, I hope we're starting to get the message out. And thank heavens for people like you who are such a key link in the chain. People like me can do all the science and publish all the studies we want, but unless the word has gotten out to the public and they start thinking about it on their way home from work, they hear this podcast and they come back from their drive a different person. It's a matter of education now, and that's why you and this podcast and so many others play such a key role here. So, but again, to educate, we don't need animal flesh at all in your diet. And so that's the message that needs to get out so our most important patient, planet Earth, lives and thrives, and so we all can as well.
I asked Dr. Furman the same question. And then I asked him also, why do we have such a disconnect? Why can we just not see past what we're actually doing? And he said that he feels because we eat the processed food that we eat, we've become detached because we just don't care about anything, not even our own health. So what would your final advice be to somebody that is in that position where they just don't care about anything at the moment?
Oh my, that's the greatest challenge of all. The opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. Just don't care. And Greta Thunberg said our relationship with nature has been broken. And we, from the Western medical point of view, we suffer from NDD, nature deficit disorder. And where do you ask kids, where's your food come from? Oh, it comes from the supermarkets, wrapped in plastic. That's where it comes from. And it's just the connection with the earth is, it's just, we so deprive our children of the truth of life on so many levels, including where their food comes from. So what to do? Ideally, it starts with how we raise our children, get those children out in nature every day if you can. We used to have recess, we'd go outside, and I walked 2 miles home from school, and there were trees and birds, and even in the city in Chicago where I grew up, there was a little pinch of nature. And then we'd spend our summers on the farm, and they would be everywhere. In Wisconsin summers, there'd be thunderstorms and forests and deer and hawks and salamanders, and the real world became so real to me, and I got where food comes from. I watched it produced. So if you're raising children, get them out in the park, watch nature shows on TV, help make that connection and repair it. If they just got their head into the video games, then find some way we're going for a drive, we're going to visit Aunt Mary out in the country, where get their minds and hearts and bodies out into nature. If you are already a teenager or already a 20, 30-year-old trapped in your work cubicle as a computer programmer all day, and you're not thriving, oh my, if you're not happy, start asking yourself why. And ask, am I a natural man? Am I a natural woman? Because everyone wants to be. What's the nature of me here? And if the answer doesn't feel right, you look in the mirror and you're full of makeup and scowls, and you don't seem like a happy, vibrant person, then do something about it. And it starts with just getting outside. At least sit by a window, just see something green, put a house plant on your desk, get a pet, grow something, reestablish that bond with nature. And finally, the ultimate religion is kindness. And we need to be kind to each other, and kind to the animals, and kind to the planet. And kindness, as a bumper sticker I saw, love animals, don't eat them. You love animals, don't eat them. Okay, no animal wants to have its throat cut. Go to an abattoir, hear them scream. They love their lives as much as we can. You want to pay for, like me in that steakhouse at the beginning. Do I want to pay for their suffering? I drive through the countryside. I see all along the countryside there's anonymous sheds go on for a quarter of a mile, and I know there's hundreds of thousands of chickens and pigs and cows, and they're living miserable lives. Do I want to pay for that? I can't. It's so unkind. So cultivate that kindness and cultivate your connection with nature, and realize, like our gorilla and bonobo cousins, we are plant-eating primates. To honor your nature, honor your anatomy, honor the best part of you. People, I'm only vegan. Don't even use the word. Too much baggage, that's fine. I'm proud to be a vegan. I've been vegan for 40 years. I'm proud of it. But if the vegan police come and look in your fridge, no, they won't. Don't have to use the word. But the example you set is so powerful. And people notice what you have for lunch. They notice how you're losing weight. You're looking, skin's clearing up. Look better. What are you doing? They'll ask. You just start doing it yourself. Learn how to make a couple of good plant-based breakfasts, a couple of lunches, a couple of dinners. Start with the foods you already like. Instead of spaghetti with meatballs, how about spaghetti with vegetables? Choose the bean chili instead of the beef chili. It's not that big a sacrifice that is being asked here, but it makes literally all the difference in the world. So take those first steps, learn about it. There's no end of websites and podcasts to help you. And it's the wave of the future. You want to really help life, make your life be a positive statement. Start by becoming a healthy plant-eating hominid, and everything will get better from there. I was raised in a Jewish household after World War II. And I remember vividly the pictures my parents were looking at of the lampshades that were made out of the skins of the Jews. And I'll talk about an ultimate desecration. It didn't take long after my epiphany in the steakhouse, realizing that I'm paying for the death of these animals. Within a week, I'm at home and it's time to get dressed to go to work. And there's my leather shoes. And I put them on, and I put on my leather belt, put my leather wallet in my pocket, and remembering the pictures, those cadaverous pictures of the lampshades, I realized I'm putting on the skins of these slaughtered animals, and I couldn't. It felt so cadaverous to me. I just couldn't do it, and I went in the backyard and I dug a hole. And I put my leather shoes in there, my leather wallet, my leather belt, covered it up and filled in the hole. I stepped back. I apologized to the animals because there was a living animal at one time, every one of those. But if you don't know, you don't know. But once you know, then you're it's incumbent upon you to act upon it. And the era of non-leather wallets and hemp belts and Nike running shoes began. And that was the last animal product that I decided to ever purchase. But and it's a very charged subject, of course, and some of my Orthodox Jewish friends just bridle at the thought you know, 6 million Jews were killed in World War II. But every year we kill 80 billion living creatures around the world every year. What right do we have to inflict death on such an industrial scale on these lovely, innocent, they're innocent creatures, they don't know. And every one of them, they respond to love, every one of them. I went to an animal sanctuary on Maui a couple of weeks ago. We sat down, the old turkey came by and plopped right in my lap there. The pigs come by and want to scratch their ears. All animals respond to love. And how dare we treat them as commodities? And again, on such an industrial scale, next, kill them. The death machine, as Dr. Sailesh Rao calls it. We've got to stop the death machine. And while I can't close the slaughterhouse, yes, you can, because the most powerful act you do all day is taking out that wallet and putting down that dollar bill. What you buy in the supermarket and in the restaurant is what's keeping all of this going. And as long as we keep buying it and eating it and consuming it, they're going to keep producing it. But if we stop and go to plant foods, the meat will rot in the case. And what are they going to do? They'll produce something else. What's going to happen to the farmers and the ranchers? Let's help them transition. They're not the enemy. They're brothers and sisters. They're growing our food. Help them. You don't have to run cattle on your land. You don't have to run dairy operations on your land. Grow vegetables, grow fruit trees, grow industrial hemp. Pay them to let them become foresters and let the trees come back. There's so much else we can do with the land. It's just money. Just help these people. Pay the mortgage on their house for a few years. Send them to night school to learn how to grow a new crop. Buy their equipment, buy their seeds, give them some crop insurance, send their kids to college. Help them make this transition. Don't grind them up in the gears of the economy. And if we do that, just money and political will, then a new day dawns here. We'll have a new agriculture. We'll have a new renewing environment, and the death will leave that hangs in our daily lives in so many ways. And we'll have a new relationship with nature and with each other. We'll be, people often say, I became vegan. I'm not so angry all the time now, and because you're not eating all that animal fear and death, I think. So all the way around, and my Orthodox Jews said, no, the 100 trillion animals is not worth that much compared to the life of one Jew. And the speciesism is what that is. And God love him, I have compassion. That's how he was taught. But that's the major obstacle. And it's not the Jews' fault. Everybody puts humans so high above everything else on this planet, not realizing that the humans depend on everything else on this planet, including how we treat them. So it's human psychology is the biggest obstacle here, and the economics of that engenders. It's not the science, it's not the biology, it's what we've been raised to think we need to do, and now we need to break down the walls of our confined ideation here and adopt two magical words. Why not? A lot of power in that word. Why not? Let's grow our food in a different way. Why not? Let's eat, put a different food stream through our bodies and get healthier. Why not do that? And if we do that with a little bit of courage, a little imagination, and a little bit of tamari sauce, we've got a tastier, better future ahead for all of us.
Dr. Klaper, it's been absolutely amazing, and I could talk to you all day, every day, because you're so interesting, and you've just got it all together. The environment, animals, humans, it's all together. You're the full package. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been such a delight speaking with you personally and knowing that you're going to help get this message out and educate so many people. I'll rest easier tonight. And you truly are helping to make it a better world. And it's an honor to be able to contribute to your work. Best to you and all your listeners.